Hey guys, I'm April from Giggle Glitter Graphics, and today we're working on part 2 of the Curioflora files. These files have been written by the mysterious Bloom Keeper, a collector of rare and magical flowers. Each week, you get a letter from the Bloom Keeper, as well as a recipe, information about the flower they found, and their notes. This is a free project series going out to members of my email list, but if you'd like to join us, you can sign up using the link in the description down below and have this project sent to you immediately. This series has been inspired by stories from 5 of my past junk journal kits, and this week the Bloom Keeper has visited the forest from my Forest Adventure journal kit. I'm going to talk more about Forest Adventure at the end of the video, and you can find a link to that in the description down below. There are 4 sheets in today's download, plus another copy of the backer paper from part 1. We're going to use the same backer paper throughout the project series, so I'm going to include a copy of that each week so that you don't have to go and hunt down the previous week copy. There are instructions at the top of each page, but I'm going to go over everything with you. 3 of these sheets are printed on paper. I use 32-pound copy paper, and 1 sheet is printed on cardstock. I'm using 110-pound cardstock, and that is the sheet with the flower card and the fussy cuts on it. I've printed the reverse side of the letter and the envelope with the backer paper. I highly recommend doing the envelope for sure because when you open this up, it's going to be very white inside if you don't use that backer paper. But on the letter, you can get away without printing that back side if you want to save some ink, because we're going to just fold this up and tuck it inside. So that is up to you. I have printed the back side of mine. For supplies, you're going to need scissors, and an optional paper trimmer will help cut out some of these larger square pieces a little faster. A liquid glue is nice to have for assembling the envelopes, and you might like to use a glue stick for most of the assembly. We're going to be gluing a lot of things back to back today, so I like Uhu for my glue stick. I will probably use my Fabri-Tac, just a disclosure, because it's not as messy on my work surface. If my glue stick gets on the work surface and then things start sticking to it while I'm filming. So I'll be using my Fabri-Tac for everything, but a glue stick is a great option for assembly today. I'm also using a mixture of Vintage Photo and Bundled Sage Distress Oxide. So Vintage Photo Distress Oxide and Bundled Sage. I actually forgot to do these before I started the video, so I'm going to do that really quickly now and get those edges done up. This just kind of finishes the edges and is an optional step. All right, so I've got my distress ink on, and I used Vintage Photo on the envelope and this little notes paper, as well as the flower card. And I used the Bundled Sage on the letter. I like how it lets me put little green streaks across the creases in the center and not cover the text. And I used it on this little recipe card. And I didn't put any ink on my fussy cut, so I left that as is. So now we've got everything sorted, and I do have a little note for you guys today. I very much focused on storytelling for this series, so all 5 weeks, this week and the next 4, the ephemera is going to be very similar. The Bloom Keeper is very organized and detail-oriented, so everything is going to be basically the same, but with a different letter, different notes, different ingredients, different envelope. So I really encourage you to deviate from my instructions and create something that's all your own. As a bonus, if you want, you can go over to the Facebook group and share what you made with everybody there. And I'll link that Facebook group in the description down below with everything else. So let's start assembling everything. Let's go ahead and start with the envelope. So we've got our basic envelope. We're just going to fold in these 2 tabs on the sides, fold along the line here at the top, and then fold a line along the line here at the bottom. So once you get all your folds done, your glue, and I'm going to use my Fabri-Tac. A glue stick is maybe a little too big for this, so a liquid glue might work a little better for you. I'm just going to glue along these tabs, and I'm going to stop my glue at about where this angle comes in. Let me get a little closer and flip this out for you. So where this angle comes down, I'm kind of stopping my glue right about there because this doesn't need to be glued all the way at the top because our envelope doesn't come all the way to the top, this bottom fold up. So I'm just going to get this glue on both tabs. and give that a press. And I'm just going to sit this to the side so it can dry really well before I put my letter in there. And let's take a look at the flower card and the time site tea instructions. And these are just going to fold in half so that they're front and back. Same with the tea instructions, fold in half this way. So it will be printed on front and back. And then I'm going to glue these together. So this is where your glue stick will make quick work of it. And then I have my bone folder on hand. I'm going to use this to kind of press my glue down. You can just use your hands if you want to. And then same thing for the recipe. For the notebook, we're going to fold this in half the tall way. So we get the outside of the little notebook and the inside of the little notebook on separate sides. And then we're going to fold it in half to make our book shape. Once we've done that, open it back up, glue the back sides together. Just going to get a good layer of glue on there. And give it a good smush. And then that'll fold right in half. You might need to firm this crease up a little bit using your thumbnail or the back of your scissors or your bone folder so that you have a little notebook. And then we have our fussy cuts. Now, if you're cutting by hand, I cut using a Brother Scan and Cut, but if you're cutting by hand and you want to make sure these match up really well because they're going to go back to back, you can cut out identifying areas. So you could cut out the top of these leaves and maybe the handle or this little spoon area or all three on each of these. Line those up and even glue them together and then finish cutting everything out and everything should line up pretty well on both sides. You also have the option of just kind of going around at a larger space. You don't have to cut quite so tight. And then you can use distress ink on the edges or maybe some gold foil or something like that just to kind of finish it off. So there are some options with these that you can kind of play with, but I am just going to glue mine back to back. There we go. So there is my tea fussy cut to go along with my recipe. Make sure everything is lined up here. And finally, we have our letter, and I'm going to grab my envelope. And you just want to fold the letter so that it will fit inside of the envelope. So I like to kind of sit it next to the envelope so that it's centered-ish. I'll fold up part and I'll turn it around and I will place it so it's just below the top of my envelope, and then I'll find where I'm going to fold up here, and then you end up with a letter that's going to fit nicely inside of your envelope. And I'm just going to pop that right down in there. And now all of my pieces are ready to go into the file. So I'm just going to unwrap this and open it up. And this is going to go into my first section. If your pockets aren't in the same order as mine, then just find the one with the green leaves. That is the one that goes with today's entry. And I'm just going to tuck everything down inside of here. And then if you feel like your fussy cut is going to get lost in there, that it's just not going to be found whenever you're going through and pulling things out, you can put it inside of the envelope. That's a great alternative. But everything should fit right in there in my file. And that is it for week 2 of the Curioflora file. As many of you know, I like to incorporate stories into my junk journal kits, and one of my earliest kits, I had a series of kits called Adventure Journals. One of my earliest ones was the Forest Adventure, and this is the journal that I made with the Forest Adventure kit. This is a full cover tutorial. This is my own journal that I made. But the tutorial does cover how to make the outside cover. It has everything you need to make all of these little pocket pieces, these flip ups. And I have a tutorial that goes through step by step for that. Here is the back cover. Similar kind of structure. There's a sketchbook in here with some drawings. Another pocket. There is a tag in every one of these pockets. And then there is a map tucked in up there. Some things relevant to the story down below. And there are 12 little journal entries that go through and tell a story throughout the journals. So this is one of my earlier stories, and I left a lot of room for creativity and interpretation in the story. It does have 12 parts, and we don't have a name for our main character or exactly what they're even there for. I always imagined it was a sword. I have a lot of sword imageries, things like that. But there's some room for you to add to this story. A lot of my newer things are a little more cut and dried, and I do enjoy doing that. So I'm going to continue in that direction. But if you want more freedom for design and more freedom for what your story is actually going to be, then this kit is a great one for that. So I made this as a writing journal. You can make your journal to be decorative or anything that you like. That is totally up to you. But all of the digitals you see here, all of the printed bits, are included in the kit. So there is a lot of pieces for you to work with to kind of create your own journal. And I do have this kit linked in the description down below. So if you'd like to check that out in my shop, you can go and do that. As always, thank you so much for liking and subscribing and participating in the Facebook group. I've been really excited by all of the projects that I've seen you all post. So please keep those coming. I enjoy seeing your creativity. So keep crafting, and I will see you next week for part 3 of the Curioflora file.